He says they don't know what's going on in his mind. We've got Keir Starmer in Cobra, the government's emergency committee, preparing for presumably quite a number of eventualities. You have people trapped in Israel from this country who can't get back. David Lammy's been criticised for that. Where are we at 22 minutes past 4 on Thursday afternoon?
Well, a key tenet of military operations is surprise. So if the Americans were to strike Iran, they're not going to be able to achieve complete surprise. We're talking about it live on television now. But I don't think they give them, last minute warning that the planes are taking off. So it looks as if preparations are in place. There's one American carrier battle group in the region. There's another one approaching it. The Americans, as the world now knows, have B-2 bombers at Diego Garcia, and they're important because it's the B-2 is the only aircraft that carries this deep penetrator weapon, which was specifically designed to address underground targets like that. They built it for that kind of mission. So that leads you on to whether or not the Americans can use Diego Garcia. And we have an emerging situation today because it's being suggested in some media outlets that the Attorney General, Lord Hermer...
Him again?
Yes, who we know is a human rights absolutist, is telling the Prime Minister that he thinks that such an action would be against international law. So Downing Street at the moment are saying they don't want to discuss hypothetical situations, but it's possible that this situation could become non-hypothetical very quickly. So
they're saying that Hermer appears to be saying that defending allies is okay, but aggressive action isn't. But of course, with the Chagos Islands and Diego Garcia, where on earth are we in that scenario? Tell us about that.
Well, I've got just for context quickly, aggressive action. Iran is an aggressive state. Iran has been funding Hezbollah for years. Iran was funding Hamas. Many people think they ordered Hamas to carry out that terrible massacre in October. They've been arming the Houthis, who fired rockets at British and other allied shipping.
They're all proxies of Iran, aren't
Correct.
they? And Hezbollah as well.
And there's another thing on the charge sheet. They've been giving ballistic missiles to Russia to fire at Ukraine. They are an absolute rogue state, and we and others have a right to defend ourselves against their actions, and the world would be a better place if Iran's ability to try and create a nuclear weapon, which one day they might be able to put on the tip of a missile, was removed. So we've got to understand the nature of the regime and the country that we're dealing with. Right, now hopefully there's no dispute about that. We come on to the agreement. I've got it here. It's a bit like the Brexit days again, always read the small print. If you go to Annex 1 of this agreement, which, remember, has been signed, it says here, the key paragraph here is point 2 in Annex 1. The United Kingdom agrees to expeditiously inform Mauritius of any armed attack on the third state directly emanating from the base on Diego Garcia. Now, what does expeditiously mean?
Hold on, so they have to inform Mauritius if we fire something from Diego Garcia?
Well, if that runway were used to attack a third country state.
Why was that agreed to?
Well,
what's it got to do with Mauritius? I know we're leasing it back, but I mean, they're allied, of course, with China and Russia, and Russia's allied with Iran.
Well, you see, the Prime Minister told the House of Commons...
What a mess!
What
a complete mess!
I'm just warming to my thing.
Okay, all right, go for it.
I'm not arguing with your description. But look, the Prime Minister told the Commons recently that China had opposed this agreement. That's simply untrue. The Chinese congratulated the Mauritians when the negotiations were concluded. China has invested over $1 billion in Mauritius in recent years. It seems to me inconceivable that if we notified the Mauritians, they would keep that secret. Now, Philippe Sands, KC, rears his head again, who's represented the Mauritians for many years in London, a long-time personal friend of the Prime Minister. He told the House of Lords last week, expeditiously, in his interpretation, meant in advance. So in Sands' opinion, if those American B-2s were to take off in order to drop the deep penetrator on this nuclear weapons site, or the enrichment site, then under the agreement, we'd have to tell Mauritius about that in advance. That is Sands' opinion. To me, militarily, that is insane.
Can I just get this straight in my head? Because what you've told me is, as you say, insane.
Well, I've quoted from the document about the legal.
Mark's not making this stuff up, okay? It's in the agreement that, in regard to Mauritius.
I don't know if I can show that to camera, but
you can.
There you go.
You can. It's there.
Right.
You can get it. You can get it online.
Yeah.
It is there. It is the agreement that we've signed with Mauritius. So, we had control of the. Let me just lay this out in my mind so I understand it. We had control of the Chagos Islands. They were British overseas territories. We decided to not have. We were in negotiations with the Mauritians. The Mauritians now have control of that territory. We lease back at a huge cost to the taxpayer one of those islands, which is Diego Garcia, where there are military bases, which is strategically.
Oh, we get a few other islands thrown in as well.
Oh, do we? Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's.
We get the rest of the archipelago as well.
Marvellous. So we have all that, but the agreement says that if we launch a missile from Diego Garcia, which may well be one that we want to launch to Iran, we've got to tell the Mauritians. The Mauritians then tell the Chinese they'll tell the Russians, or else they directly tell the Russians tell the Iranians. What's the point? What's the point of having it? What's the point of having the base there?
It's not just if we launched a missile. We've got to
tell beforehand.
Well, as far as I know, we don't have any long-range missiles based on Diego Garcia.
Right.
But there's a very long runway.
Yes.
Right. And so this says. Any armed attack on a third state directly emanating from the base on Diego Garcia. So if a warplane takes off, if it emanates from the runway, we've got to tell the Mauritians. Now, go back a stage. I mean, it's fundamentally mad.
Yes.
Think what we're doing. Even leave aside the treaty for a moment. Just first principles in pub English, right? We're paying Mauritius £30 billion of British taxpayers' money at a time when, economically things are very tough, to rent back a bunch of islands that belong to us in the first place.
Yes.
Because Philippe Sands and Lord Hermer and others seem to believe that if we don't do that, we could somehow lose control of these islands under international law, but the government have never explained to... Sorry.
Okay, sure.
The government have never explained to Parliament what that legal threat is.
And even if the legal threat is there, it's a threat and not an actual thing.
It's a legal opinion.
It's a legal opinion, but even if it is a threat, okay, let's say for the sake of argument that it is a threat.
By the way, it's not.
Okay.
It's nonsense.
Okay, so it's an opinion or possibly a threat. So preemptively, we've decided to give up the Chagos Islands, even though we didn't have to. And no one's ever explained why, and no one's ever said, well, it's a legal opinion that they may well be taken off us. But they haven't been taken off us yet. So we're going to preemptively solve, in inverted commas, the problem by giving them away. And now that has made us and the Americans and the West in general we're in a position now where, with that agreement you have in front of you, we've got to tell the Mauritians, who will probably tell the Chinese, the Russians and the Iranians, that we're launching from that runway. I mean, we're through the looking glass here, Mark.
We are, and it is Kafkaesque, and the government's whole argument is that we needed to pay this money to secure this base for potential future military operations.
But what's the point if you're going to have to tell your enemies beforehand anyway?
Bingo.
Okay.
Now, and by the way, this is important, this agreement was signed last month, but it's not been ratified by Parliament. Parliament could still reject this.
That's fascinating. So we could be, hypothetically, in a situation in the next few days, maybe, where planes are taking off from Diego Garcia.
Yeah.
We're seeing what's happening. We don't have to tell the Mauritians just yet that this is happening.
But it depends on your interpretation of expeditiously.
Right, okay. But essentially, Parliament, in theory, could reject the agreement you have in front of you. It's not absolutely nailed down.
It's not been ratified by both parties, no.
Okay.
But I presume the Attorney General would try and argue that because we've signed it, we're honour bound by it.
So there's still a chance, which you and your Conservative colleagues are pushing for, as we know and have consistently, for Parliament to reject this. How likely do you think it is you're going to persuade... I mean, you've persuaded me in the last 5 minutes, quite frankly. How likely is it you think you'll persuade enough Labour backbenchers and other parties to realise what an absolute crock of I can't say at 32 minutes after 4 this is?
Well, I think most Labour I mean, look, Labour MPs can read too. I would hope that every Labour MP would read this so they know what they would be voting for. Would that everybody had done that during all the Brexit debates. But anyway, I can't see how any self-respecting Labour MP could vote for this, because when that bypass that their constituents want is cancelled, or their A&E unit isn't upgraded, or that GP surgery isn't expanded, or that special needs school doesn't get built, people will say, well, you gave all that money to Mauritius, mate. So, you know, when we are in straitened economic times, as we all know, as your viewers know very well, why in God's name would you give someone 30 billion quid to rent back an island that you own in the... I mean, what self-respecting Labour MP could possibly vote for this and go back to their constituents, look their constituents in the eye?
And in the process, weakening our country and the West defences. It beggars belief. Mark, we will have to leave it there.